Football, the beautiful game, has a rich and storied history. One that traces back to Sheffield, England, where two clubs have been battling it out for over 160 years. Welcome to the story of Hallam FC and Sheffield FC, the two oldest football clubs in the world, and the birthplace of one of the most historic rivalries in the sport, and how I managed to attend the latest in the long list of matches between the two sides in 2025. So then, let's start with Sheffield FC. Founded in 1857, this club holds the distinction of being recognised by FIFA as the world's first football club. Initially, their games were more for fun than competition, things like married versus singles or professionals versus the rest. But these casual games laid the foundation for something far, far greater. And just 3 years later, in 1860, Hallam FC was formed by a group of cricketers who wanted to create a more inclusive and accessible club. The founding captain, John Charles Shaw, was at the heart of its creation. Hallam's origins go even further back. In 1804, the Plough-in landlord allowed a local cricket club to use his field, eventually leading to the birth of Hallam FC. Today, the club stands proudly as the second oldest football club in the world. Now, what makes these football clubs truly legendary is the rivalry they've built over the years. In 1860, Hallam FC and Sheffield FC played each other for the very first time on the hallowed grounds of Sandygate, the oldest football ground in the world. The game, played on Boxing Day, is known as the Rules Derby, a contest that's still being played today. Sheffield FC won the first ever Rules Derby 2-0, but that was just the beginning of a rivalry that continues to capture the imagination of fans in Sheffield and beyond. The fixture was the first intercity football derby match, and it was called the Rules Derby due to the Sheffield Rules, which were a set of rules for football that were written in 1858 by members of Sheffield Football Club. Since the 19th century, the two clubs haven't met too often and don't meet a lot anymore either, especially in competitive league matches. They face off in pre-season friendlies and local FA fixtures, and when they do, it's always a spectacle, reminding me of the deep roots these football clubs have in history. As well as being the spiritual home of football, Sandygate is believed to be the oldest cricket ground still in use in the north of England, connecting football's birth with its cricketing past. The humble kick-around, over 163 years ago, was just the beginning of Sheffield's claim as the true home of football, a city that gave birth to the game we love today. Last month, it was announced that the two sides would meet again in the quarter-final of the Sheffield and Hallamshire Senior Cup, after their last clash in 2012 saw Sheffield FC win the game 3-2. Sandygate was packed with just under 1,500 supporters on the night, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. The original fixture date had to be rearranged due to masses of snow and ice that had covered the pitch, so it would be rearranged for a week later, Tuesday, the 21st of January, 2025. Getting a ticket for this fixture felt like an impossible task, queuing up in the snow and the ice at Sandygate for the opportunity of seeing the oldest derby and the first derby in world football. A quick chat with a member of club staff about some of their fans from across the world who'd flown in, and quite a big cup of beer later, the ground was bustling and ready for action. Football fanatics from across the globe, from Argentina, Germany, America, and anywhere in between, had come for a game that for most people had only occurred a few times in their life. One fascinating story of this fanaticism from international supporters was seen in the glass cabinet inside the Hallam FC clubhouse, where there was a half and half one-of-a-kind scarf of Hallam FC and St. Pauli. Learning more about this and its rarity and one-of-a-kind nature, I found that there was a few fans from across the globe who'd had their own scarves issued. Like I say, one of St. Pauli, another of Portuguese side Astoria Praia, and the list goes on. If you're one of these super fans, I'd love to hear more about your story. I was one of the many packed into the shed end, and amongst the more active fans definitely. Surprisingly, there were a few Sheffield FC fans amongst those Hallam fans in this end, but not quite the gentleman's club that it would have been in 1860. Hallam FC went 1-0 up early in the game, and the place felt as though it was far north of the reported attendance. In some ways, if you look one way at the ground, it sort of gave the feeling of being a Sunday league match, and looking the other way with the big brick outhouse and stand, it was definitely somewhere where you could tell football had been played for over 100 years. One of my more interesting observations from the game, from my place behind the goal, is that you could really see the slant on the pitch, which gave the game even more of a legendary look to it. Like you could draw it and it wouldn't look out of place in the 19th century, even to this day. It truly did feel as though football had beamed out of this place to every corner of the planet. Now, Sheffield FC's equaliser was definitely a peach, but not that the outnumbered away fans made too much of a fuss amongst the masses of Hallam supporters. The goal that sealed the game and gave Hallam FC their first victory over their Steel City rivals in many, many years felt like a very, very special moment, and compounded the whole event as a true bucket list item for football fans. Like a solar eclipse though, you may be waiting a long time for the next one, but when they do, I can't recommend it highly enough. The pitch was muddy, the action was often brutal, and the play park next to the ground just illustrated that the true home of football still lies in its humble grassroots environments. Something kind of bizarre that happened in the second half was all of the Hallam supporters decided to take their shoes off and taunt a Sheffield FC fan with it. So if anyone knows if that's a normal occurrence for Hallam FC or some kind of traditional taunting, I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but if someone is a bit more of an expert on that, please let me know. As someone with massive interest in this kind of game, a historic game, a cultural game, I'd like to hear from you in particular. Have you attended this fixture before? How many times have you seen the two sides play? And what was your best memory from it? Something else I'd like to mention too is how welcoming the staff of Hallam FC were during what is probably their biggest game in years, their busiest game in years. On the contrary though, I found it very, very strange the lack of media attention on this game. Where is The Athletic, Mundial? Where are all these big sports publications that surely this is completely up their street, but yet I saw none of it. There was a severe lack of any sort of media attention on it apart from local publications, newspapers and media outlets. It flew very much under the radar,